which prevails at present should be converted into a federal system. The provincial governments should cease to be mere delegates of the supreme government, but should be made semi-independent governments. These are Malaviyaji's words, not mine. In his Lahore Congress presidential address of 1909, Malaviyaji declared, "What is needed is the government of India should require a reasonable amount of contribution to be made and should leave the rest of the revenues to be spent for provincial purposes." Mr. Chairman, sir, infrastructure, health and education must be the three pillars on which India should build its edifice of development over the next decade. I applaud the government's clear-eyed vision so far as investment in infrastructure is concerned. The allocation for roads and power stations, airports and seaports are impressive and probably the best that could be done in the present fiscal situation. Government outlays will not be enough, and we will have to achieve macroeconomic stability in order to attract global funds to meet our infrastructure needs. I am dismayed, however, by the government's myopia in not seeing that a healthy and educated populace is imperative for sustained economic growth and development. The Finance Minister has said in a newspaper interview that you referred to yesterday, Mr. Chairman, that he will not scrap any social sector programs. But that is not enough. The country is facing a public health crisis, and yet a 4.2% nominal increase in the allocation for the health department masks a 4.4% decrease in real terms if one adjusts for the 8.6% inflation we have had over the last financial year. The biggest disappointment of the budget lies in the miserliness shown towards education, especially primary and secondary school education. The manifesto of the ruling party had proclaimed that spending on education would be raised from 3% to 6% of GDP. That is the norm in much of Asia and ought to be a matter of national consensus in India. Where is the Finance Minister's roadmap towards achieving that objective of raising it from 3% to 6% of GDP? The budget has managed to put the country into reverse gear on the education front, with a decrease in real allocation of 3.2% in this sector, so vital for the future of our young generation. Pandit Malaviya would not have been pleased with this sorry state of affairs, even if you have provided 500 crores for new teachers' training in his name. On the face of it, higher education fares a bit better than school education in the government scale of priorities, with the announcement of 500 crores for new IITs, IIMs and one humanities centre in the name of Jayaprakash Narayan. So we can expect nearly 50 crores to be spent on brick and mortar in 11 new locations this year. But has adequate attention been given to the requirement of human resources, including faculty, for these new educational institutions? And is this the best strategy to achieve broad access and excellence in higher education? Why not invest similar amounts in 10 of the most promising colleges and universities, both central and state, that may have gone into some decline in recent years, but can be turned around through visionary leadership and judicious strategic investment? This is precisely what China has done to have at least half a dozen of their universities break into their league of the world's top 100. And I would like to put in an earnest plea to the Honourable Finance Minister not to misuse the name university, because a university is something universal. By all means, set up a sports academy in Manipur, but call it what it is. There are going to be railway polytechnics, training colleges, that is fine. And also, you can have horticultural institutes, but to call them universities is to make a mockery of the idea of a university. I teach at Harvard, so I'm very conscious about the purity of the term university. I'm sad, of course, that one of the horticultural universities the Finance Minister has proposed, I would name them institutes, is not being set up in Bengal. If I could invite Sri Arun Jaitley to my constituency, I am sure he would be convinced that the most delicious fruits and vegetables, and beautiful flowers too, come from places called Baruipur, Sonarpur and Bhangor, any of which could serve as wonderful location for an innovative horticultural institute. I can understand that rupees 100 crores would be a sensible amount to allocate for a single institution of this kind. However, flagship nationwide schemes featuring in the government's agenda, announced with much fanfare, need to be backed by significant resources and call for much larger outlays. It is a shame, the Finance Minister said in his budget speech, that the apathy towards the girl child is still quite rampant in many parts of the country. It is a bigger shame and a sign of greater apathy that he has set aside a paltry 100 crores for the Beti Bachao, Beti Padhao Yojana. Mamata Banerjee's Konyasri scheme has state budgetary support to the tune of 1,000 crores. The provision of 100 crores for the modernization of madrasas is a mere pittance. I call upon the Finance Minister in his reply to increase each of these allocations tenfold straight away to show a modicum of respect to our women and minorities. Right. There is yet another 100 crores set aside for ghat development and beautification of the riverfront in 7 cities from Kedarnath to Patna. I can only say that the Ganga does not stop flowing at Patna. So we need debt relief in Bengal. We need an enhancement of royalties on coal in Bengal. And we want justice to be done to the eastern region of the country. I will conclude shortly, Mr. Chairman. I want to say a final word about a budgetary item of symbolic value. I refer to the allocation of 200 crores to cast the Iron Man of India in an iron mould. I wonder what Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel would have made of it. I have a sneaking suspicion that the hero of the Bardoli Satyagraha would have preferred to donate that amount towards rural development that has suffered a budgetary cut of 3.2% in real terms. And his even greater elder brother, Vithalbhai Patel, who held the flag of freedom aloft in Europe with Subhash Chandra Bose in the early 1930s, would probably have excoriated the government for wasteful expenditure in the same way as he held the British accountable when he spoke eloquently in these precincts as a member and then president of the Central Legislative Assembly. To honour the Patel brothers and other noble figures of that generation, including Swami Vivekananda, we need to follow their ideals of honesty and integrity, service and sacrifice, not just worship them in iron and stone. We, of course, would love to have a beautiful statue of Vivekananda, yes, but we know that what is huge and is not great, and we want reasonable expenses. In final conclusion, in my final word, Mr. Chairman, sir, is that in this time of rampant food inflation, we must be grateful to our Finance Minister for presenting a prosaic budget. But we Bengalis are incorrigible. One of our poets had bid farewell to poetry, as in the kingdom of hunger the world had turned prosaic, and even the full moon looked like a flaming roti. But he said it in poetry. Kobita tomaye dilam ajike chuti, khudhar rajye prithibi goddomoy, purnima chand jano jhalshano ruti. I appeal to you, our people are poor. Whatever your Expenditure Management Commission says, do not cut the food subsidy. Target the fertilizer subsidy. Many of my colleagues have gone to the Central Assembly for lunch at subsidized rates. 1/3 of our country is poor. 1/3 of the world's poor live in India. So your first task, Honourable Finance Minister, I would submit through Mr. Chairman, is to ensure that the poor and obscure in our country have 2 square meals a day.